All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Culture Study. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-host.
Hello, Giovanni.
All right, and so we are back today. Gio, what album are we looking at today?
Today we're going back a year, and we're looking at B.I.'s Cosmos album. It was released, I think, mid 2021, and I thought it would be an interesting case study, if you will, because his album, or the theme of his album, is focused on youth, and since we're in our youth, what better time to do an album review on said album. A little history on the artist. His name is Kim Han-bin, but his stage name is B.I. He came up with that name after writing a song for a survival show that he was on. The name of the song was B.I., B-E, and then I. And he got his stage name from it. He was originally part of the K-pop group known as iKON. They were together for 4 years before a drug scandal separated them. He left the group by himself, I think. It was only 4 hours after it was announced that he decided to leave the group to not harm their image anymore. And he took almost a 2-year hiatus. His fans couldn't find him. His close friends couldn't find him. He was literally nowhere to be found. The only way the fans knew of his existence was through the iKON members who kind of hinted that they kept in touch, and his family. And I think late 2019, he released 3 songs as part of a charity event, and all of the money that he'd earned through YouTube and streaming services, he donated it towards, I think, children hospitals in Korea. And then, a little bit after that, he came out with his debut album as a soloist, Waterfall. And that album is it's very personal. Like, most of his fans see it as his diary in music form, and so it's very powerful stuff. It talks about the dark place that he was in mentally and emotionally, what he felt during his fall from grace, and then after a small break, he came back with Cosmos, which kind of deviates from his previous album. This is more of it's leaving behind his dark past, and now focusing on creating music for his fans. And that's basically it.
Yeah, and I definitely noticed a difference in the sound, I guess you could say, because this is more like what type of style would you say he is?
Well, he's known for being a rapper. In my opinion, he's one of the best rappers to come out in recent years. So his style is kind of more aggressive. That his flow is more aggressive. His enunciation is aggressive. The ad-libs are more aggressive. Everything about him is very high energy and aggressive. And in comparison to the album that we did last week, is a completely different thing.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I noticed. I think this is my first time hearing of a Korean rapper, other than the certain ones that are designated that role in a group. So this was definitely another first time experience for me getting into it. Let's jump right into the album, starting off with the first song, Alive. What were your thoughts, June?
I think it was very. It's kind of like a splash of cold water, just in the first few lines of the song. Um, literally the first lyric says, "Every day I pretend to point a gun at my head and pull the trigger. Madness is the driving force behind me. It makes me realize that I'm alive." And this song it's kind of like that, being an adrenaline junkie, but to like a more severe case. It's very intense. It's a very I think it's my favorite song on the album. Just his flow is incredible. The lyrics are profound, and the way that because Korean is a very interesting language, and the way that he's able to play with kind of like the romanization of Hangul with English to make certain bars work is pretty impressive.
It's funny that you said the lyrics are really profound, because that's like word for word the exact wording I put in my notes about this song, was that, you know, the lyrics I found were like really profound. I really enjoyed the beat. Like it's one of the best beats I've ever heard, especially pertaining to like the hip hop and rap genre. Like, it's one of the best I've heard. Definitely caught note of you know, the lyricism and stuff like his flow, because when I was trying to read along with the lyrics while he was rapping, it was definitely a bit of a struggle on my part to keep up. But I liked a lot of the sound that was coming from this song. I liked a lot of the lyrics in it. I liked the overall message of, you know, wanting to be like free and feel alive in this world, you know. I think the line I liked the most was he said something like I don't know where I'm coming from or where I'm going, you know. And like I think that's definitely a line that a ton of people can relate to, when especially the younger generation, you know.
Yeah, I can relate with struggling to read the lyrics and pay attention to the song, because when I was doing that last night, I had to take double takes on certain parts because it was just too much to take in. And yeah, it really resonates with the youth. He does like an incredible job with that, because the theme is centered about youth and kind of like living it. So he did an incredible job in literally just the first song of the album, because in most cases, well, not most cases, but in certain cases, you see like a rapper or like an artist introduce an album and the theme of it has something, but it kind of takes them a few songs to get to the point. In the Cosmos album, he does it straight away.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a part of it that was really well, that really adds to like the whole theme, and not only that, but like his target audience of the youth, is just you know, how upfront he is being about like a lot of the stuff he's saying, which is something that like a lot of the youth don't have, in a sense, you know. Like, it feels like we're constantly having to like tiptoe around what we talk about in certain topics, you know. Like it feels like certain things can't be talked about in our like society, even if we're struggling with them, which is why, you know, I cannot stress this enough, and you brought it up, but it's pretty crazy to start off a song saying every day I point a gun to my head and pull the trigger, or I pretend I point a gun to my head and pull the trigger. Like, that is quite the abrupt way to start an album, but it sends home the message that, like, you know, he's going to talk about like he's going to be upfront about like how he feels, because he doesn't want to hold back, you know. And kind of, you know, it sends that message of like, you know, when you're feeling these things, you shouldn't have to hide them just because, you know, people aren't comfortable, in a sense of like talking about that topic, you know. Because then it just causes people to how would you say, bottle their emotions and not discuss these truly urgent, you know, emotions and topics that need to be discussed, you know.
He gives a very detailed insight into his like mindset as an artist and as a person is just those two lines, and I don't know. It kind of like it's very shocking to see because as an artist, you kind of have to find a driving force to keep going, and for him to kind of like put an image to what he feels as having to pretend to kill himself in order to feel like to like ignite his passion is interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely interesting. But like, I don't know. I just really liked, just the fact that this is the way we're starting off the album. Like he's really, like how you said, he's getting into the topic straight ahead. And like you mentioned, especially when it comes to the Western side, it's like it's not an everyday case, but like you see certain cases where it's obvious like there's a certain theme that an artist is trying to cover, but they either take too long to really get to the message and like really illustrate that message, or they aren't consistent with it, where it's like they take how would you say, like they take breaks between songs, like they don't make it a like straight through kind of thing where like kind of like where they transition seamlessly from song to song and either continue like talking about the topic in an interesting way, or like they have a range of topics they want to cover and they go like they flow it seamlessly. There's cases where they don't necessarily do that the best, and I think even you and I and Dom covered like a couple albums like that where it's just like don't necessarily see the not necessarily linear pattern, but like it's hard to see the connection between like songs on an album.
I think I forgot what album I heard, but it was very hard to kind of pay attention to like the message of the album because it was kind of like hidden behind so much like a lot of other stuff. What album was it? I don't think I'm gonna be able to remember, but it was kind of like this is the theme, and then it kind of got buried by everything else, and then you kind of forget the whole point of the album because you see it once, and then the next song it's something else, and then but the third song it's like I'm just listening to another generic rap song at this point. Yeah. To continue on in his next song 19, this kind of focuses a little bit more on like love. It introduces the idea of love, and youth is full of love, you could say, or for some, not all. A line that I liked about it, it says, adults whose hearts have cooled down, please don't try to judge easily. And I don't know about you, but that really resonates with me because coming from a certain background, I guess your parents expect you to go into a certain field, and then when you introduce like I guess a bizarre idea of being something else, it's kind of like they're very quick kind of shut you down. And it's not even like careers only, like interests. Like when I told my parents, or when they found out that I was into K-pop, they were not like mean about it. There was definitely teasing, and this is kind of like made it worse than it needed to be.
I totally get you on that. Like, there's like a plethora of things like that like specifically like how you said, like the certain background, certain cultures that you come from, you have to like worry about and stuff. Like, it's almost like you can't deviate from the norm type of thing, like these are the things that you're expected to like. And I can say for sure that like my parents have been more so welcoming at least in my case of like when it comes to like careers and fields, you know, they've been more welcoming to like me pursuing what I want to do rather than, you know, the norm of like, you know, the norm of them pushing me to do something because they want me to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like, you know, the interest goes, it's like I can tell you for sure well, I've gotten more lucky in the sense that like more of my family members have started to get into some of like this, not really the main hobbies I'm into, but like the side ones, you know, like more of them have been getting into like anime. And I've already told you I have a cousin who's into K-pop, you know, so it's not like fully like outcasted type thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's still like hobbies where it's like, you know, it's not just them, but like people in general, you know, they kind of have that sense to like judge for whatever reason, where it's like, why are you still into that, instead of like going in with the mindset of like me, like obviously yeah, you can crack jokes, but like for the most part my main like mindset is like I'm never really gonna like hate or clown on someone for having an interest in something if it brings them happiness, you know, as long as it isn't hurting them or anyone else, you know. It's like I could care less what type of music someone's into, what type of shows they watch, you know, because at the end of the day, it's probably something that brings them great joy in their life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, you know, I started getting really back into wrestling early 2020, and it's like I haven't looked back. I've been really getting into it, and while people are always just like, oh, you know, it's fake, or you're still into that at this age, and I'm just like, what can I say? It's something I enjoy watching. It's something that, you know, I enjoy talking about on podcasting. You know, it helps me in those elements. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to the whole thing about deviating from the norm, because I want to get like your opinion on this. Because I mean, it's always so different, and I feel like this is something that like people are gonna have their own strong opinions on. But I think the greatest sense that I've felt like how would you say, like what was the word I used earlier? Not isolated. I don't know, but you know, the biggest example I can give, especially of like feeling outcasted. That's what I was gonna outcasted is like I mentioned about deviating from the norm, where if you don't tick certain boxes, I don't know if you've dealt with this, but certain people tell you you aren't your own race, essentially.
Yeah, I've dealt with that.
Like I've had
And
plenty of people be like, "Oh, you don't know about this or this. You aren't into this and this. Well, then you're not Hispanic." And it's just like, why does that stuff make me Hispanic? Just because I'm deviating from the norm, I'm no longer considered Hispanic, even though it's in my blood. You know?
and it's even like the most basic of thing. Like, let's say like you don't speak Spanish as well as others, you're like immediately seen as not that. Because I don't know about you, because when I was in like early elementary, my Spanish was abysmal. It was very bad. Like it was like till like 8th grade that I really started speaking Spanish. And whenever someone would come up to me and say something in Spanish, and I would struggle to reply, or to my uncles or cousins, they would say, "You're Mexican. You're supposed to know how to speak Spanish." And it's like, it's not. I am Mexican, but the way that I was brought up, it was kind of difficult in a way to develop like my Spanish skills properly. So it's not even just like hobbies and stuff. It's just like the very basic knowing a language that you still get kind of. I guess like is ridiculed is, I don't know. I feel like that's too like harsh of a word, but yeah.
Yeah, I especially, like I mentioned, strong opinion. I have definitely a ton of strong opinion, especially because of what like I went through growing up, and it's like people kind of like how you said, it's different upbringings, and it's not that my parents didn't try to teach me Spanish. It's just I had plenty of my own reasons not to. You know, like growing up Hispanic, especially like it's different now, but like in the 2000s when we were growing up, it was still under the mindset of learn English because that's the only way you're gonna make it in this country. You know, coming from a foreign country. Obviously, I was born here, so I don't know what it's like to come from like a foreign country. But like that's still the mindset. There is, you know, English is your number one priority, and speaking it, because how many times have, you know, Hispanics been told, oh, you need to speak English in this country, you know? So it's like it's like that's the number one priority, and it was only until getting towards the end of middle school and early high school that at that point everything switched up, and they're like, oh, well, now you should learn your language because, you know, bilingual people get paid more in certain fields. And it's like, so now you're changing up everything on me that like now I should have learned it, but the entire process before was ignoring it because I needed to work so hard on perfecting my English, you know? And then the second thing is that, you know, one, you're a kid growing up, you don't know what's going to be best for you in the future. And so it's like when you're learning a new language, it's so difficult. And, you know, as a kid, you really don't want to put in the time sometimes. So it's like people are just like, oh, you didn't want to speak it as a kid. It's like, I was a kid. Why would you think that was like a decision I should have made, you know? Like that should have just been something where it's like you just slowly but surely teach me over time, rather than just letting a kid decide whether he wants to learn the language or not, and then it comes back to bite him later when everyone keeps making fun of him, which ties into a whole nother thing of, you know, why are people going to want to learn when anytime they try to, you're just making fun of them for it, you know? Like anytime I've tried to speak Spanish, it's like it just results in me getting made fun of. So even though I've, you know, practiced my Spanish, it's like I don't even bother speaking it because what's the point? It's just gonna get me made fun of, even though I'm trying, you know. And that's like the one thing I hate the most is like, you know, you clearly have these people who want to learn, but you know, they're constantly ridiculed for it.
And I think something that it's like growing up, we're depending on the household, but for me, I was more exposed to English and Spanish. Like at home, my parents were working very hard because they've come from a new country and they have to, you know, set a foundation for their children. So they were busy working, and all I had was school. So naturally, my English developed more than my Spanish, and I was a very quiet kid growing up. So that kind of also led to my Spanish not being as good as it needed to be, because I was very quiet with my parents. And yeah, there's a lot of factors that contribute to it, but I think we're getting to a point where people are a little bit more accepting of that, because I've been trying to learn French for a while now, and I've been in like certain communities for learners and people who help, who want to help people learn French, and that's very like subjective because the whole point of it is to teach people. So I don't get why they would be mean, but I don't know, like just the overall like learning a new language is seen differently than before.
Yeah,
at least to me.
Yeah, I just wish that like obviously I don't mean it in like a ridiculing way. I look at it as a constructive criticism way. I just think the Hispanic culture just has like a long way to go when it comes to learning and unlearning certain things, you know. Like they especially need to learn how to properly handle mental health, you know, and taking care, or, you know, being open to discussions about it, you know. They need to definitely improve on in the sense of like trauma, because like how many times have like people like tried to like open up about their problems, and the first thing they're met with is, oh, you think you have problems, and here's all I have, and like, or like, here's all the problems I have to deal with. It's like at the end of the day, that helps no one. You know, that's one thing they need to improve on. They need to improve on a lot of, just a lot of certain traits and stuff. And I know a lot of people at this point are like, man, they've really deviated from the song they were talking about. But really, this is kind of putting that song into perspective of the fact of like, this is a Korean guy talking about these topics, and here's how it can completely apply to a whole different culture, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the one line you read.
Yeah, I was thinking of a way to get back into the song, and it fits perfectly because he says in the thing, I don't want to grow up and be or the theme of the song really is not wanting to grow up and being a responsible adult, having responsibilities and all that stuff. And something that someday, let's say like our parents, they tried their best for us, but they were lacking in certain areas. I think that's a fair statement. But when we get older and we have children, that responsibility is now on us. And since we experienced certain things, we can kind of improve upon it. And I know this is very, like, a very hopeful statement to say because not everyone is as mindful about these issues as we are. But I say for the most part, since we have a better understanding on, let's say, like mental illness and just like what things that would have been better for our parents to done for us or treated us differently, it's definitely going to contribute and make future generations get more mindful of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there are just countless times where I look at like examples in society, and I'm just like, I hope that in the future, if I ever become a father, I hope to not repeat these mistakes. Hope to not repeat these generational sort of like traits, and continue the generational trauma that has been passed on from generation to generation. Like I always hope to be the end to that type of thing. And that's kind of like how you were saying, like that's what this song is kind of like talking about. Just it's called 19. It's kind of like representing the mind of a 19-year-old, and it just kind of just discusses a lot of things I like having to cope with the fact that you're getting older and there's going to be a lot of these expectations, which kind of ties into what I'm talking about, this whole generational thing of like, it's something that keeps happening where, people are just expected the most out of them, even at such a young age. It's like people kind of underestimate how young 19 really is, just because 18 is the legal age of like when you're classified as an adult doesn't mean that mentally you are, and it doesn't mean that you're mentally ready for a lot of the stuff that's put onto them. Like, how many times has someone turned 18 and now they're already being bombarded with, all right, well, here's your choice, either go to school or go to work, or oh, you're 18, all right, well, you better hope to have your entire life planned ahead of you now, down to the smallest detail. You better be ready to take on all these huge responsibilities. And yes, people can look at, like how he was saying, he doesn't want to accept those responsibilities. But, like, people could look at that, like, in a negative way. But, like, that's truthfully the mind of a kid. Because, like I said, just because 18's the legal age of an adult doesn't mean it's mentally is. And you can't blame someone who's young and going back to the first song, wanting to, like, utilize the best of their youth. You can't really blame them for being afraid of the responsibility that's coming in the future, because of look at how much is expected out of them. They're expected to have everything set for them down to the littlest detail. They're supposed to be expected to already, either go to school and know what career they want to go to and, have ways to pay that through, or immediately start working and get stuff done, like in the sense of like already have something going for them as far as a living situation and the job being enough to pay enough bills, or else now they have to get a second job, a car for transportation, have to have everything set so that by the time they meet someone, they can start a family and then be prepared to provide for that family, you know. And people just kind of don't realize how much, like I said, how much fear that can induce into a young mind.
Hmm. I definitely relate to that, especially recently. I think on Thursday's episode, I mentioned that I came back from a job interview, and ever since then, my dad's been very like insistent that I get the job. He's like, "Oh, but so much money, you're gonna earn so much money, money. Think about your future." And like, just from it's like my second job interview ever, and I'm already feeling all of this stress because of the pressure that my dad is putting on me, and I don't know. It's very, well, I guess like the most like if you really dumb it down, it's a very relatable message of this song. And what's also interesting, as you were talking, when he wrote this song, he was 26 in Korean age, because their age is I think 1 year older than us, so we would be 21 in Korea. He wrote that when he was 26, and the main line of the song, or like during the chorus, he says, "My heart is still 19." And it's very interesting because this doesn't only apply to us who are at that age, but to people who are older and they still are like mentally a lot younger than they are physically. And, yeah, that is, I don't know, it's kind of scary to me because nobody really wants to grow up because of all of the pressure that comes with being an older age. And even if you're already at that point, you kind of have that desire to go back to how things were, and it's just kind of it's very scary to me because just imagine all of that pressure that he has, that other people have at that age. It's just like, we're going to be there someday, and we can't do anything about it to stop it.
Yeah, it's definitely like a scary concept. And going back to like the first song we were discussing about, like, or actually it was this song talking about like hobbies and stuff. You know, I think that's the main reason why we see a lot of people that are very bitter in their older age, you know, and you know, are kind of, like I said, bitter towards the younger generation that like are still continuing to enjoy their youth even as they get older. You know, the people that continue to still keep up with their interests and hobbies and don't let, you know, a lot of the stuff stop them from enjoying it. You know, like they're very, in a sense, envious and jealous that people are still, you know, enjoying their hobbies when they weren't allowed to, you know, in a sense they were forced to grow up, you know. And I mean, I can fully relate to that in the sense of like, I know what it's like to be forced to grow up, to be forced to mature faster than you wanted to, because it's like, I mean, it's a combination of factors, but a lot of the stuff I went through and saw growing up caused me to see a lot of what the real world was like. And so it's like, I can tell you from my own experience, it's like at a young age, it's like I was in elementary, middle school, points where I know people are gonna like kind of like argue against this, but like it's a point where how would you say it, like in the nicest way, a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter, you know, like obviously you should be doing your best to learn and stuff, but like in the sense of like it's not like to the level of high school where, you know, you gotta do your best because, you know, this is what's gonna get you into college, you know. Like the main focus of elementary and middle school should just be, you know, learn the topics that are gonna be needed in high school classes, you know, and that's about it. Like there's no extra stress of like your grades are gonna determine what college you get into. You know, it's like there's none of that, but yet, you know, I was here, you know, while everyone else was enjoying, you know, essentially while they were enjoying their youth, it's like I was giving up on so many of my dreams and so many of my hobbies because I was like, oh snap, I gotta worry about how I'm gonna take care of my parents. I'm gonna have to worry about what career I go into to take care of myself so I'm not homeless on the street. And now here I am 20 and I'm just like, I know what I want to do, and honestly I don't really care what other people think about what I want to do, you know? Like, you know, my mindset, it's like I don't care about the money. I care about what makes me happy. And, you know, for all the people that want to be like that's not a good mindset to have, that's why I live by the phrase, you know, fight for your dreams and your dreams will fight for you, you know. If I put in all the work and effort, you know, nothing's impossible in my mind, you know. And even if, you know, things go to worse, you know, it's like at the end of the day I can at least say I tried, which is something a lot of people can't say when it comes to their dreams, you know.
It's very, 'cause in high school, so we were together obviously, and we tried our best every single day, or not every single day because, you know, but for the majority of the part, we were really focused on our academics. We were like, we have to get into our dream college and do this, follow this academic plan to graduate with this major. And then we were really focused on that. But then there were other kids who didn't have a care in the world for that stuff. They were living their high school life with their friends and going to eat and all of this stuff. And it kind of like, sure, it didn't pan out how we saw it or how we pictured it in high school, but at least we have that kind of that reinforcement. Because now, whenever we apply to the school, they ask for our high school transcripts, and our high school transcripts are literally very good compared to everybody else. So we have that reinforcement, and then it's just like, imagine all the people that didn't try as hard as we did, or didn't care as much as we did, and they literally have to go, or they have to settle for a lot less, just because they chose the wrong time to live out their lives. And it's kind of like, we should be very grateful for the decisions that we took at that time, because now we could live our life and how we want it a little bit better because of all the work we put in before.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel that, you know, it's like the sacrifices were well made for a lot of us because it's like, you know, we were able to get into, you know, such schools, but also like we have that as a backup whereas many don't, you know. And especially like the one biggest thing is, you know, well, at least we graduated high school, you know, and like I think the biggest thing is that we kind of felt accomplished in ourselves in a way, you know. Like, I don't know, like I have my own thoughts on my own graduation from school, but you know, when I graduated, that like at least the one thing I told myself was, hey, at least you got through it, you know. At least you got through it with good enough grades, you know, that you were able to get into, you know, a plethora of good schools and kind of had your my choice of schools, you know, instead of, you know, how like you're kind of saying where certain ones had to settle because, you know, they didn't like some like, and the people we're referring to are literally the ones who settled for less, I guess you could say. Like, it's not us talking about like the people who actually worked and, you know, weren't able to get certain opportunities. This is like literally the group of people who settled and did like the bare minimum, you know. But yeah.
And it isn't like we're not hating on them, but we're not being like, what's the word? Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for?
Condescending?
We're not looking down on them, basically. Or, like, yeah, it's just something that we should take into account because it's reality. And something that came to mind, which is very kind of depressing in a way, well, not depressing, but just kind of like sad, is when I graduated high school, when the day was getting closer. Even before then, my dad would say, well, you should be proud because you're graduating high school. And then I would reply to him, why would I be proud? Everyone graduates high school. But now that I think about it, my dad never got the opportunity to graduate from high school because he had to start working at the age of 12 because, his father got very ill and eventually passed away. And since the rest of his siblings didn't really have the same,
mentality.
Yeah, they didn't have, the same mentality and weren't as, what's the word? Caring, I guess. They all kind of did their own thing. And he literally took the responsibility by himself to get a job and to get literally nothing. Like, his pay was literally nothing, but it was still contributing to his household. And it was literally him and his mom providing food for everybody else. And I don't know, I just feel like, looking back now, I feel very awful for saying something like that to my dad. Because, I don't know, it's something like when you grow up and you start to see the hidden, not hidden message, but what your parents were actually trying to tell you, it just kind of makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way too.
Mm-hmm. We should move on to how much time we have left?
We got 3 minutes and 20 seconds on this one, so I think we'll get into the other songs in part 2 right after this, but finishing up with the song 19 though, I think, just lastly want to say kind of like how you're saying, it's just there's a lot of similarly, there's a lot of just a lot of lessons and a lot of stuff that when you look back at the song, there's so much to take away from it, and that's just really kind of the whole point of sharing this experience with time, because one is just showing how music from a different genre, from a different culture, can still be connected to the experiences of us in a completely different culture and lifestyle, but at the end of the day, it's up to us, how you were saying about the whole thing about later in life when we have our families, it's it's up to us to take those lessons and truly apply them the way that we think is best,
Mm-hmm. And it's the lyrics aren't very they're not simplified so that people see it and immediately think, oh, that's the message. It's kind of they're there, but they have, when you really think about it, there's so much behind the lyrics, even if it's not as straightforward as other songs make it out to be. Because in in the Western side, songs are very straightforward. The lyrics are, this is what I want to say, this is how I said it, we're done. But we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about 2 songs, and it was all based on 3 lines of song. It wasn't even the entire song, just 3 lines.
Yeah. That's the beauty of music to me, and I'll elaborate more on that in part 2 because we only got a minute left, and I already can feel I'm gonna go on a rant about what you just said. But so we'll close out here. Thank you all for joining for this episode. Tune into part 2 where we cover the rest of B.I.'s Cosmos album.